Revolutionary greetings. Haki Kweli Shakur coming back at you today. I know it's been a minute since I dropped my last video, so I had to come back and touch on this video that I wanted to make about this topic, about some of our greatest economic towns, cities, and people, who put it down for self-determination and independence economically. These are some of the best historic parts of cities in the South that put it down to the fullest economically and independently. So this video is basically about 4 of those towns, and I just want to touch on one that's really not really even mentioned out there like that, and it resides where I live at right now, which is in Richmond, Virginia. First, let me give a shout out to all my subscribers once again. Thank y'all for subscribing to my YouTube channel. Second, I just want to give thanks to my ancestors, my blood ancestors and my unknown and known ancestors. And I hope that those spiritual energies and cosmic forces also are the Rishas, the Liwa, the Abosom, the Netarus, and all those spiritual and cosmic energies walk with me today and give me the strength and the power and the guidance to deliver this video to y'all. Third, just want to give a shout out to the New African Independence Movement, August 3rd Collective representing right here, Cedar Gabriel Prosser, Spirit of Carlos A. Cooks, and this basically is, the spirit of Carlos A. Cooks that's going to be speaking to y'all today, because he one of our main people that was on this, economic thing and this black independence and, self-determination economically, freedom for, New African people, black people in North America under the Marcus Garvey movement. So I'm going to dedicate this video to Marcus A. Garvey, since it's Black August, Carlos A. Cooks, and people like Maggie L. Walker, man, all the people who put it down for us economically, man. And this video is basically going to be talking about where I'm at as far as what Maggie L. Walker and this era and what they put down. First of all, let me just say this. This is the name of the place that I'm speaking of is called Jackson Ward, a.k.a. Black Wall Street, a.k.a. the Harlem of the South, man. This area is so historic that I had to touch on this topic, because I know many of my New African black people I had never even heard of this information that I'm about to drop. But the main place I'm gonna be talking about in this video is Jackson Ward, but I'm gonna include other great towns that also put it down, that are also was known as aka Black Wall Street. But this is the ultimate, suppressed history about this Black Wall Street from the city that I'm from, which is Richmond, Virginia. So also this video that I'm gonna be touching on is very pivotal, because this era and time is basically, man, I'm gonna have to say, man, this era right here was the most pivotal to our existence here in North America, man, because this period right here is what started our economic, downfall, and our economic impoverishment and our economic oppression. Because why I say that? Because when this era fell, because this was I would have to say to the day, besides all these cats out here for self-righteous entertainers, celebrities, these bourgeoisie millionaires and these so-called billionaires we have today, this period is where we reached our pivotal economically, man. We was doing everything to the greatest, to the greatest potential that we could, man, and we had it. We had it all, man. That's what I'm gonna base it. We had it all in these little towns, man. If these towns would have survived that time period and would have been able to sustain itself, there's no telling what black people and New African people would be doing right now, man. This is why I'm making this video. And the period that I'm speaking of is between the late 1800s, early 1900s to 1950s, man. They was putting it down. trust me, they was putting it down. And it's so sad that, you know, from the tyranny of this country and this government who helped destroy some of these towns, and basically they did destroy these towns, because I'm going to go on record and say they did destroy these towns, even though we couldn't sustain ourselves either. But I'm always going to say that it was the government fault what happened to these towns, man. This country what happened to these towns, man, because they was haters. You know what I mean? They seen what we was doing. You know, we ain't need them. You know what I'm saying? We was independent. And true independence is economic power and control over your own destiny. So this is what this video about, man. Jackson Ward, a.k.a. the Harlem of the South, a.k.a. Black Wall Street, and all the Black Wall Streets, a.k.a. Little Africas. All of them was Little Africas, man. And that's just the way I see it right there, man. So I'm going to start this video off with something I want you to just think about, that I seen, that I really want to drop this quote and this statement that I think is very powerful. You know, and I just want y'all to think about this statement that I also came across. And it says, Black Wall Street. What Black Wall Street and all these towns of independence, you know what I'm saying, overstood, and that was important, was the principle they kept money in their communities. The dollar circulated like 36 to 1,000 times within these communities, man. And sometimes that would be that would take a year, sometimes, for this currency to leave the community. Today, we don't appreciate that principle. Why? Because the dollar today will leave our towns no less than 15 minutes, man. These great communities were tight and wealthy because they traded dollars hand in hand, because they were dependent on one another as a result of segregation and racial laws, man. So what that basically is saying is, like, these towns were so tight and knit that due to segregation and these racial laws and the times that they was coming up in, the key principle that they overstood is to keep the black dollar within the community and don't let that black dollar leave out of the community. That's the principle. You know what I'm saying? And this is what we lack today. We don't keep the black dollar within the community. That black dollar leaves the community every 15 minutes that it's made. So you see the problem with that? You see why we're struggling? You see why we're impoverished today? Because that dollar is leaving our communities. We spending our money with foreigners, outsiders, man, who don't put those dollars back in that community and keep those dollars circulating in those communities. This is why new African and black communities are impoverished like that. You see what I'm saying? Because we don't work with each other hand in hand to keep this dollar within our communities. But these great towns in this period of the 1900s to the 1950s did that. This is why they're so legendary, so historic. And we need to look at the blueprint of these towns and try to bring these plans back into existence and try to get back to this greatness, man. You know what I'm saying? Self-determination and independence is international law. Like you always see me quote on my social sites. Self-determination, controlling your own destiny, and independence. You know, that's indigenous law. I'm going to go further in international law, because international law is still like a systematic, laws from the Western society, but in origin, it's indigenous laws. You know what I'm saying? So let me get right on into it, because I don't want to make this video too long. Jackson Ward, the Harlem of the South, a.k.a. Black Wall Street, man. In the 1930s, the early 1900s, let me give a shout out to Maggie L. Walker first, because in the early 1900s, I'm going to say that she was the one that really put it down. You know what I'm saying? Because Maggie L. Walker, this great woman, the first woman of any race to have her own bank and to be the president of her own bank, she put down the economic blueprint, you know what I'm saying, with, what she did here, man. Like, she started it. She put it down. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm going to say in the 1900s, salute to Maggie L. Walker, man. But let me get right on into the Harlem of the South. The Harlem of the South was in Richmond, Virginia. The 1930s to the 1940s, the Harlem of the South, in this area, in district of Jackson Ward, was, this community that thrived, man. Like at the end of the Civil War, like slaves, people that was enslaved was just coming out of enslavement. This is the crucial period. New Africans was coming out of, enslavement. But let me remind you, in some of these towns, like Richmond, Virginia, we had New African blacks who bought their way to freedom. So, like in this certain segment of the town, it already had free blacks. You see what I'm saying? Which, I only say they was free to a certain extent. I don't like to say they was totally free because, to me, our people were never totally free because we were still being discriminated against. We still was being racial, profiled and hated by races. So I don't like to say that we were, completely free. We just, some of our people had certain opportunities and certain, rights to obtain things and to get resources better than the enslaved New Africans. You see what I'm saying? So I just put it to you like that. Okay, in the Harlem of the South, in 1930, 1940, this town was duplicated of the Harlem of up north, which is your Harlem Renaissance. But this town was, where I'm staying in Richmond, Virginia, this town was boom economic because they all came together. When they came out of enslavement and the free blacks got together with those enslaved Africans, they came together to build up this part of the city where they were all migrated into. You see what I'm saying? Which is Jackson Ward. This area of Jackson Ward is on the north side of my town. And through the 1930s to the 1940s, this was the place where it had nightclubs, theaters. It was called 2nd Street, aka the Deuce. So keep that in mind. This place was called the Deuce. And the Deuce was, this place of commerce and trade. And by this place being the commerce of trade, it also got the nickname called the Black Mecca. Because this place was doing so much business, man, so much trade and commerce was coming through this area that economically, man, it was just booming. Like they was building up wealth. You see what I'm saying? In this part of the city. This place called the Deuce, like I just told you, it had clubs and theaters. And this place brought so many popular New African people, musicians, if you want to say celebrities, from all types of the art fields, man, were coming here left and right. And some of these people were, Bill Bojangles, Lena Horne, Billie Holiday, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Count Basie, James Brown, Nat King Cole, anybody you could just name that was cracking like they was cracking up north, and, in the Harlem Renaissance came here. And they came here frequently. So this also was creating money. You see what I'm saying? By bringing these people here, these great people here, man. And it just was booming. You know what I'm saying? So let me just give you a brief history of Jackson Ward. In the 1700s, this was the home to free blacks. By this time, the population had grew. I'm talking about 10 times it had grew far as black people. And due to segregation laws, it separated whites and blacks at this time in period in Richmond, Virginia. So by the late 1800s, it became the bed of black entrepreneurship, man. This place had produced barbershops, corner grocery stores, insurance companies, banks. You know what I'm saying? In between this period of 1888 and 1930, man, this district had 5 banks, and all these banks were black-owned banks, man. Think about that. 5 banks, black-owned. And what is banks? Banks are your key to your economy. Banks is your economic structure. You see what I'm saying? This is your structure, and this comes out of like what the great Baba Imari Obadeli was saying in the what I deem as the PSES. You know what I'm saying? Your political, social, economic structure. You see what I'm saying? Banks are the central piece of economic independence. You don't have no banks, you don't have no economy. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have no currency and no income, you don't have no independence. You don't have no state, you don't have none of that. It all starts with a bank. So think about this period. Jackson Ward had 5 banks, all black owned, between the periods of 1888 to 1930. Man, that is, come on, man. One of these banks was called the True Reformers First Bank. This is the first black bank in the United States, period. Right here in Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia, man. We had the first black owned bank, and it was called True Reformers. The other bank, like I told you, Maggie L. Walker, early 1900s, was the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank. This bank was started by Maggie L. Walker and her comrades, and she was the first woman of any race to own a bank. New African, black woman, and the president of one. Come on, man. That's powerful. You see what I'm saying? Very powerful. Also, this was the place of your Southern Aid, your Southern Aid insurance company. This was the first black-owned insurance company in the United States of America. Southern Aid, right here in Richmond, Virginia. Jackson Ward. The thing about Jackson Ward, aka the Harlem of the South, Black Wall Street, man, this area in Richmond, Virginia, plays so much of a unique historical role in the financial history of New African people and their understanding of themselves, not solely as an economic consumer, but as a commercial proprietor. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Think about that. This area is your basis and historic place and had a historical role in the financial history of New African people and understanding themselves as economic, commercial proprietors, man. Come on. Think about it. That's historic. And let me move on right into the history. In the late 1900s, Jackson Ward growth and became the commercial center, place in the United States of America at this time, man. Like the residents that live there, the people who lived in the neighborhood, they didn't even have to leave this. They didn't have to leave their neighborhood to go nowhere, man. They had everything they need right there. They had to go nowhere. They did all their shopping right in this area. Black people, man, had it cracking. You see what I'm saying? Like they didn't have to leave the neighborhood at all. This also is the area of your first historic jewelry store in the United States of America, man. You see what I'm saying? Like, just think about all this, man. Like, they had it cracking. You see what I'm saying? Like, Jackson Ward, a.k.a. Harlem of the South, the Black Mecca, the commercial trade center of the world, had your first banks, first insurance companies. I'm talking about far as black owned now. Black owned. First jewelry store. You know what I'm saying? First African woman to own a bank. First African woman to put it down economically to the fullest. People like these bourgeois, you know what I'm saying, Toms like Oprah Winfrey, man, pay homage to Maggie L. Walker, man. She did it before all y'all. She put it down. She paid the the path. She laid the path for y'all, man. You see what I'm saying? Right here in Richmond, Virginia. She did it first. Let me get into the reason why Jackson Ward is no longer around. I always like to say that the government played roles, which they did play roles, because you can see they play roles because your local state and your local government are in cahoots with the overall government. And when they see black people doing something powerful without them, this is when they come in to destroy it. They swoop in and destroy it every time, man. Whether it's through gentrification, subsidizing housing, just all types of racial tactics to remove this element so black people can be dependent on U.S. capitalism and U.S. imperialist government, man. Period. They do it every time. They want us to be, dependent on them so they can control us. You see what I'm saying? So at this time, as Black Wall Street, Jackson Ward was cracking for so long, they was cracking from at least the early 1900s all the way up to this period, the 1950s. For some reason, these cats decided they wanted to build a highway, which I deem as gentrification. They built this highway, which was called the Richmond Petersburg Turnpike. And when they built this highway, which is today your I-95, which takes you from, the deeper South, Florida, all the way up into, the northern region of the United States of America, I-95, the most, important highway, the most commercial highway of trade and everything in the United States of America on the East Coast. The southern East Coast, the northern East Coast. Period. Everything goes through I-95. So they decided to take, but the thing that was so crazy about it, they took I-95 and cut it straight and built it straight through Jackson Ward, Black Wall Street. Took it straight through that, which I deemed they did this on purpose because they seen what was cracking there. And by them doing that, and let me remind you, Jackson Ward built these projects, which is called Gilpin Court, is located in Jackson Ward. And when they built these projects, they wasn't projects at first. They were houses to help low income families get on their feet, by Maggie L. Walker and all of them. All of them came together and the Jackson Ward Gilpin Court projects was put up. So it wasn't ran down at first. It was good housing, good living for people that's just coming out of slavery. You see what I'm saying? So the thing that's crazy about this is like when they built this highway in the 1950s, this started to push black people out of Jackson Ward. See what I'm saying? This is gentrification, people. It pushed our people out of Jackson Ward. So our people started separating. And then in the period of the Jim Crow laws, you see what I'm saying? After this period, they wanted to start integrating whites with blacks. See, this caused another problem when they started integrating whites with blacks. And this just caused confusion. They built up, the highway, and Jackson Ward started to fall apart. Started losing economic power. They started losing population, and it just started falling apart. And then they started building up all these European American businesses around Jackson Ward. And when they started building up all these businesses around it, like the Richmond Coliseum, your convention center, and all this type of stuff to exploit the area, which I always say European, corporations always come around, to shut down black independence so they can exploit the land. They do it every time, man. And when they did this pushed in more blacks into the Gilpin Court area. And then the Gilpin Court area started to deteriorate. Because we couldn't sustain ourselves, man. And it fell apart. Poof, Jackson Ward is history. Now they trying to, and the crazy thing about it, years and decades, years later, they try to come back into these areas to try to revitalize them, to bring the European Americans back into exploiting the land some more, like they're doing right now here in Richmond, Virginia. They're trying to they always come up with this revitalization thing, man, which is who it's going to benefit. So there you have it. Jackson Ward is destroyed due to gentrification, integration, and exploitation by corporate European capitalists. And all out flat hatred because these great new Africans of Jackson Ward, aka Harlem South, didn't need y'all. We didn't need the United States of a government. We had our own government in this one little neighborhood, man. We self-govern ourselves. And now this historic place is ran down, and they're trying to build it back up, but it's ran down through, this is what they do. They always let lower class new Africans, due to how they condition us and how they got us into economic slavery, economic oppression, that we let the property value go down. And so this when they try to move you out and bring their people in and move the property value back up to exploit the land. So there you have it. Jackson Ward, aka Black Wall Street, is no more. Gone for good. You know what I'm saying? So that's just I'm just showing you like what they do. You see what I'm saying? Let me move right on. I'm gonna move right on to another, you know, great area in a the historic Black Wall Street. I'm gonna run through this real fast. This is your historic Black Wall Street. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. AKA Lower Africa, man. This place was the home to 15,000 new Africans and blacks, man. This place was cracking. That's all you can say. Popping. Same as Jackson Ward. Same thing. Same thing. They put it down the same way. This place was 35 city blocks. You know what I'm saying? Of strictly new African black people, man. This place had over 600 businesses. Jewelry stores. Churches. Anything you can name, man. You know what I'm saying? Over 1,000 to, to 15,000 residents lived here, man. Didn't need to leave the city. You know what I'm saying? Didn't need to leave this part of their town, man, Tulsa, man. They ain't need Oklahoma State. They ain't need none of these places, man. They ain't need the government. They ain't need none of this stuff, man. They had it cracking on their own, man. New African independence. Didn't need them. Didn't need nobody at all. Didn't need this government. They could sustain themselves economically, man. I'm talking about black power, because this is what really black power is. This is what new African power is, man. Economic independence, man. What happened to Black Wall Street? Jealous racists, European Americans, seen what they had, seen the wealth, seen the independence, the self-determination, came in, burnt Wall Street down, attacked it, dropped bombs, killed kids, killed parents, killed, the spirit of this town, man. Over 3,000 new Africans was murdered, killed, 10,000 left homeless, 21 restaurants, 21 churches, 30 grocery stores, 2 movie theaters, black-owned hospital, black-owned bank, black-owned post office, black-owned libraries, black-owned schools, black law offices. They even had their own airport, their own private planes, their own bus systems, all destroyed. In 2 days. Destroyed. Eradicated. Pushed out of existence. So let's remember Tulsa, Oklahoma. Black Wall Street. A.K.A. Lower Africa, man. And, rest in peace to all the kids, the babies, all the ancestors who perished in that Holocaust and that tragic attack on new African people, man. Go do your research on that. Tulsa. Black Wall Street. Let me move on to the next Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street, Durham, North Carolina. Another part of the town in Durham that was predominantly New African and black. This place was started by John Merrick and Charles Spalding. John Merrick is the cat who created and started his own business called the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance. See, a lot of these towns was built off life insurance companies. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, they got into the business early. You know what I'm saying? The early 1900s. So this shout out to John Merrick, a cat who put it down. You know what I'm saying? Gathered up new Africans, gathered up a bunch of blacks. You know what I'm saying? Came together, put their money into something, and built up what we have as Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina. At this time in Durham, North Carolina, and across the whole South, 80% of the blacks were living under the poverty line. You know what I'm saying? In the 1800s. You see what I'm saying? This cat, John Merrick, and some of his comrades came together and set up this Black Wall Street in a 4-block radius, which is called a 4-block district of Parish Street in Durham, North Carolina. So they built up wealth. They built up stores. They built up everything that could sustain a community. These new Africans didn't have to lose their community. They had to leave their community. They had everything they need right here in Durham, North Carolina, off of 4 blocks of Parish Street, which was Black Wall Street in Durham, Durham, North Carolina. What happened to these people? Same thing, man. Gentrification, integration, and what I deem as the smokescreen, revitalization, man. Migration. A lot of blacks started migrating out of North Carolina when they started integrating. Like I said, this integration thing, man. Like Baba Omawadi said, man, and Martin Luther King, integration was a downfall for new African people, man. Soon as we integrated with these people, we started, especially when we had our own thing, everything fell apart, man. Started separating us, man. Integrating us. Town started losing, economic power, and the population decline. It happens in these cycles every time. Economic decline, population decline. We become disfranchised. And this area in Durham became disfranchised for like 2 decades, man. And that was a wrap for Durham. You know what I'm saying? The Black Wall Street in Durham, man. But shout out to John Merrick and Charles Spalding. Black Wall Street, North Carolina. Let me move right on into the last part of this video. Black Town of Boley, Oklahoma. This place was home to the Creek Nation and the Indians. Africans got free. New Africans got free. Came together. Built up this town called Boley. And let me tell you, this wasn't the only town cracking around Boley. They had like 78 counties, black owned, man. All this was around 1903. They set up many businesses, cotton gins, banks, schools, railroad. They had their own railroad depot, their own post office, their own telephone company, but ultimately their own power plant. Now you know who put it down like that. These blacks had their own power plant, so you know they ain't have to leave their town to go get no help from no one. You see what I'm saying? Man, shout out to them, man. Shout out to Boley, man. Give it up for Boley, man. Self-determination, independence, new African people, man. The town of Boley. Put it down. Come on, man. Own power plant. That's power. That's new African power. Go do your information on this. I'm putting all this information out there for y'all to go research this and go search these towns. And like I said, this period from the 1900s to the 1950s, we had Garvey and the UNIA putting it down economically up north. Jackson Ward, a.k.a. Harlem of the South, Black Wall Street, Black Mecca, Maggie L. Walker. Durham, Black Wall Street, John Merrick, Boley, and their 78 counties. Put it down, man. The Harlem Renaissance. All this period of the 1900s to the 1950s, was our most powerful, pivotal point in our history of economic independence and self-determination, man. And when this period ended and got destroyed, this is what we have today. Poverty, economic oppression, economic slavery. This is why we don't have nothing, people. Just imagine if these towns would have sustained it, selves and never been destroyed and never fell apart and never was disintegrated by European races and European, racist gentrification, man. Just think about where we'd be today, man, as new African people, man, if these towns would have sustained themselves, man. So just think about that, man. Just want to say, man, I'm going to shut this video off right now. Haki Kweli Shakur, Cedar Gabriel Prosser, man. Spirit of Carlos A. Cooks. Let's get back to new African economic power, man. Go do your history on Jackson Ward, man, a.k.a. Harlem of the South, man. And I'm proud to say that I'm a resident here, and I'm proud to put this, bring this history forth to you so you can get an understanding of what happened to our people and what happened to us, man. Because when you lose economic independence, you become a slave. And I'm going to shut this off right here, man. Zalu, Saleh Mu, August 3rd Collective. Rebuild.